Red, White and Boo is really good fun, and it taught me a few things as well. This is a Casper cartoon from 1955. It's directed by Izzy Sparber and Myron Waldman, written by Isadore Klein, with a voice cast including Beck, Jack Mercer, and Sid Raymond. And Casper is realising it's really difficult to make friends in the present day, of course, being the 50s. And he comes across this scientist who has a time machine. And Casper decides maybe it's easier to make friends back in time, so I will travel back in time. And this is what he does. And he meets several different people, I think 4 from different time periods. And I will, with a spoiler warning in a moment, tell you who those people are. But in case you don't want to know, I will leave that for just now. And we get an opportunity to learn about events in history. And I'll be honest, the majority of the things covered I knew nothing about, and I did a little bit of Googling and I got a bit of education. I will say, had I watched this on television as a British person in the 50s, I probably would have had no idea what was going on. But it's 2024 and I have the power of Google at my fingertips, so it was nice to be able to actually find out a little bit more. I'd love to know, though, if you remember watching this as a child, or even if you're watching it now and you're American, are you aware of the events? I feel like the events are probably well known to the average American, but I could be very wrong about that. But I'd love to know. And either way, I found it to be very educational. The only thing that I don't love about this is some of the animation of the people. Whenever we have quite a wide shot or wide animation with a lot of people and they're quite in the background, they're not completely in the foreground, the detailing on the faces is not very great. It's very, I don't want to say fuzzy, it doesn't look fuzzy, but it's not very sharp either. And hopefully you'll know what I mean by that. And I didn't love that, but it's not so bad that it affected my overall enjoyment or anything. Just as an area of improvement, I think some of the detailing on some of the characters who were not so much in the foreground could have been a little bit better. We also don't get that many brilliant animations of Casper interacting with these people in history, by which I mean I was trying to find a thumbnail wondering if I'd include one of the people in history, and there just wasn't anything decent. We don't really get a really strong encounter between Casper and those people. I would have liked a little bit more interaction between them, but what we got was fine, just not quite as good as I think it could have been. But that aside, I still enjoyed it. I thought it was a really fascinating concept, and it was pretty well executed, so I'm ultimately quite happy with it. I will now tell you where Casper goes back in time, and obviously these are spoilers if you don't want to know what happens. The first person he meets is a cave person, and Casper makes a comment about how he doesn't understand women, which was quite bizarre. I don't think that really fits in with the vibe we get from Casper, but never mind. And then we meet 3 historical figures. I think 3, I don't think I've missed any. The first one is Robert Fulton, who I had never heard of, and he was an American engineer and inventor, and I believe he invented the steamboat, or a successful steamboat, which is pretty cool. There is a steamboat in the cartoon, so that makes sense. And then we travel to 1775. I like the fact that when Casper cranked the handle for the time machine, we could see the time on screen, which was quite nice. And in 1775, he meets Paul Revere. I know the name. I recognise the name, but it's not somebody I instantly could think about. I don't know why I know the name, but either way, I did some Googling, and that was pretty fascinating. And then he meets George Washington crossing the Delaware River, and I am aware of George Washington. Credit to me where it's due. I'm at least aware of George Washington. But even the characters I wasn't aware of, obviously I've got no idea if the animation is anything like what they actually looked like, because I'd stopped watching it by the time I was Googling them. But I did find it to be really fascinating, educational, generally well animated, apart from the animation of the characters who were not quite in the foreground. But aside from that, it's pretty good. Red, White and Boo is definitely a Casper cartoon that I'd say is worth checking out.